with the American Airlines jet has been identified as the third person aboard the Black Hawk helicopter that collided with the American Airlines jet in Washington, D.C. In a statement to our newsroom less than an hour ago, the Army identifying Durham native Captain Rebecca Lobach as the third person who died. Lobach was assigned to the 12th Aviation Battalion in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. The Army saying she's won many awards and served as an aviation officer since July 2019. And she started her military career as a graduate of the ROTC program at UNC.
In a statement, the Lobach family describing her as a kind, generous, brilliant, funny, and ambitious person. That family goes on to say, in part, Rebecca was many things. She was a daughter, sister, partner, and friend. She was a servant, a caregiver, an advocate. Most of all, she loved and was loved. Her life was short, but she made a difference in the lives of all who knew her.
All right. So there you get the gist of it. Here is the very first thing I want to say. Obviously, this is a very serious thing. A family lost a loved one in this person. And so my prayers go out to the family to heal and recover from this. More broadly, though, there are a lot of other people that are dead because of anti-whiteism and putting this unqualified female behind the stick of the Black Hawk helicopter. And my thoughts and prayers go out to all of the families. You had two male soldiers who were unfortunately in the Black Hawk with Lobach, and then you had an entire airplane, American Airlines airplane, and families totally wiped out, little baby children dead, and the vast majority of an ice skating team, people with hopes of even being in the Olympics someday, are all gone because of what appears to me, and I will argue the case here, the incompetence of this female who should not have been behind the stick of this Black Hawk, nowhere near, in fact, this Black Hawk, maybe to wash the Black Hawk, but maybe to spit on the Black Hawk, but not to pilot the Black Hawk. And as a consequence, all of these people are dead. There's a lot of misunderstanding about D.C., Reagan, Virginia, the Potomac. And so we'll be talking just a little bit about that. But to get started right away, swiftly into it, this is a consequence of anti-whiteism. All of these people are dead. All of these lives are ruined. And these are, including Rebecca's, it's 67 people that have died as a consequence of her incompetence. And again, that's the case I will argue, and maybe there'll be more information that'll come out as the days come forward and the black boxes reveal what they're going to reveal. But this is anti-whiteism. Cost the lives of all of these people at 67 now. But how many of these family members left behind will end up killing themselves? Lost the entire family, lost the wife, lost the daughter. Will that guy kill himself, that father and husband? How many more lives will be lost? How many more lives will sink into misery, never to be the same? All because the social morality of Western civilization is the anti-white immoral imperative. And it's more important, and it's been more important, not just for the past 5 years, not just for the past 10 years. I'm sorry, I get passionate about anti-whiteism taking and ruining lives and ruining our civilization. It's been this way for all of our lives and generations, many generations before we were even born. That has been the morality of Western civilization, is this anti-white immoral imperative. And it's more important in today's West and yesterday's West. And unless we defeat this anti-white immoral imperative in tomorrow's West, to make sure that little girls and non-whites and whatever else out there that they can find can take the place of white males. That's what's the crux. That's what's the point. That's what's the thrust of anti-whiteism, to victimize Western civilization. And the primary impetus, motivator, creator, dominator is the white man. So it's all about taking away from the white man and then giving this collateral benefits to anyone else. Oh, it's so great. The kind of things they're saying right now, I am absolutely furious about. Conservatives coming forward, thanking this killer for her service. Now, what we're finding out is what I suspected from the start. And I know that people, like we just had the question about, was it a trans pilot? People immediately went out, and this is something that we have to be very careful about. And we are very careful about in this community, is that we're cynical. And I told you, I've been telling you for 2 years, and I've told you now in 2025, you can't trust shit on the internet. So when people start pushing stuff around on the internet, it's as likely to be false as what you're going to get from the mainstream media now. That day is gone. That ship has sailed. The white race was too lazy, too selfish, too individualistic to come together in the 25 or so years that we had really to peer-to-peer communicate and make a difference for ourselves. No, it was just to make a difference for white people as individuals, selfish individuals, rather than our people, and therefore defeat the victimization of our people, anti-whiteism, and make our countries better for people of all races who live in them, including, and for us, most importantly, ourselves. Instead, we've got this kind of garbage. And I cannot tell you in the service how many times, folks, guys I have talked to who had their first choice, their second choice, their third choice, all rejected. This little cupcake, very first choice, want to fly the Black Hawk helicopter. Well, there you go. Immediately granted. So what happened? I just got to say, I can't even go another second without saying, what happened to the white guy that should have had this job? Where's he now? He's not going to have, is he going to have the money to rear a family, to attract a woman? Is he working at Starbucks? Nothing wrong with working there. Is he delivering pizzas for a living? Nothing wrong with an honest wage earned. What happened to the white guy that should have had? Nobody cares. Nobody cares what happened to him. Nobody cares. Why? Oh, because he's had it good for the past 10,000 millennia, right? Even though he's like 25 years old. He's had it good. So it's his turn to be impoverished. It's his turn to have to commit suicide. It's his turn to become an alcoholic or a drug addict and white flight into nothing but misery. No children born to him, and his family tree ended because of anti-whiteism. I just have to jump out of the gate on top of that. What happened? I gotta take a step back. I know I'm gonna get fired. I knew I was gonna get fired up. We're not credulous in this community, all right? So immediately people started talking about this. Of course, it's some other captain, Joe Ellis, I think the name was, of this another trans, Joe Ellis, and a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and people immediately saying it's got to be him. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. And I know, I mean, I get it. We just had Ryan English, but he doesn't go by Ryan English anymore, does he? He goes by like Rebecca or Riley English, and he showed up the other day. Did you even hear? Scott Bessent was in the Capitol, and Riley English showed up with Molotov cocktails and a dagger to kill the Nazis in Trump's. Can you believe this? The Nazis, the most female, the most gay, the most, is it the most Jewish? It might not be the most Jewish, but it's the most female and the most gay administration in fucking history. And so the Nazis needed to be killed by the trans Riley English. And he was going to start with Scott Bessent. For what reason? Who knows? Right? So, I mean, I get it. You're going to jump to the immediate conclusion that it's got to be anti-whiteism. That's what it's got to be. That's the fucking conclusion that you need to immediately jump to, because it always ends up being anti-whiteism. Sometimes it might be a Jewish person. Sometimes it might be a black person. Sometimes it might be a trans. Sometimes it might be a white. Sometimes it might be an Asian. So it's always going to be anti-whiteism. What in the living fuck do I have to do to communicate this to our people, to the masses of our people? Stick this in your head, push whatever up, put the piano lessons, push them out. Whatever it is, make room, because it's always anti-whiteism. So you immediately can say, I mean, do you remember 3 years ago, Tucker saying on Fox News, people are going to die because of what the Biden administration is doing to the FAA, doing to the air traffic controllers? Did everybody forget this? You know what they did? Oh, did they hire blacks? Oh, did they hire Jews? Oh, did they hire? No, they rejected white males. That's what our concern is. I want everybody to have a wonderful life. Everybody, I'm not going to get pissed off over somebody getting a hand up unless it's because they've pushed me down. Unless it's because they're pushing my people down. So what did they do? What did the anti-white Biden administration, Biden and Kamala Harris administration, what did they do? Which was already going on before Biden, during Trump, before Trump. The same thing going on in it. You can go back and read testimonials from people working in the field long before. Go all the way back to W. Bush. Go all the way back and you can read people working in the field, white guys, talking about being discriminated against, but nobody cares. Nobody's listening. There isn't a vocabulary to unite us until we came along, and then we're silenced because everybody else is, they can't take my riz. They can't take my riz. So that we got to be silenced. They got to ignore us because of our successes, because of how awesome I am, because of my drip. All right, getting possessed by the Zoomer spirit today. So we got the language that liberates us. I was thinking about this the other night. I was hoping I could remember where I could find the testimonial of these engineers, of these white guys from like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, these white engineers and how they were pushed out. And then there's another one that's a little bit more recent, a handful of years ago. Engineers pushed out. 1,000 white guys rejected from the FAA to be air traffic controllers because they're white guys. And here you have the alternative media supposed to be telling us what's really going on in the world, right? They can't even say that they're white. Rejected on the basis of race. If they had been Jews, if they had been blacks, the Washington, or the New York Post and all of these, they all would have been saying, can you believe they're discriminating against the Jews, against the blacks? You better believe they'd be saying it. But when it comes to white, so why is it? Well, we have the answer. The narrative that we live under is the anti-white narrative, and it is immoral in that narrative, which should indicate to you, if you have a brain cell, who the victim of this society is, shouldn't it? That you cannot defend white people as a group, because that's immoral. That means we're the victim of the society across the totality of the West. That's the way that is. So you got one air traffic controller in the tower at Reagan, which is in Virginia. All right. You got the Potomac. I should maybe get out the whiteboard again. You got the Potomac. You got DC on the other side. I know Reagan is the DC airport. I get it. It's in Virginia. All right. Right across the river. Scott people with this, but it's in DC. I'm gonna start throwing punches on my stream, on my Church of the West stream. We're gonna start throwing down here in a minute. Here's what happens. We got this. Who was it? Was it Janice who during the show on Wednesday said, "My God, there was just this horrible tragedy." And there was no information on it yet. And we broke in, took a little read of the news of what they had so far. What happened was an American Airlines flight was coming into Reagan, scheduled to land on runway 1, which is the primary runway that they land on. And it's a very specific corridor for the airplanes to fly. The air traffic controller, for whatever reason, and perhaps somebody has that information, perhaps it was traffic on the ground, asked the America Airlines to land on runway 33. They said no problem, they can do it. It requires a little bit of a dog leg in the land. They have to bow a little bit into DC in their flight path, little bit, and curve back around and then come into runway 33. By the way, a glorious number was my jersey number for much of my sporting career, a glorious number. And at the same time, a Black Hawk helicopter on what ended up being a training run was flying. Now, let me see if we can get this right. So the Black Hawk was coming south. The America Airlines plane was headed north. Is this right? And we'll pull up the map. And the tower asked the Black Hawk if they could see the American Airlines flight. And they said that they could see it. They said, the tower said, go behind. And the Black Hawk responded by saying that they would do that and they wanted a visual separation. And that takes a little bit of the load off of the guy working in the tower. There's supposed to be two people there. So he's working people's lives at risk. Supposed to be two people there. So he's, of course, going to be okay with that. He's watching the radar, though, and he sees the Black Hawk continue to converge on the America Airlines. So I got to make something very clear to you. The American Airlines flight did nothing wrong. They were landing and on a perfect path to land on runway 33. They have to focus 100% on landing that aircraft with all of those souls on board on runway 33. Again, a little bit trickier than landing on, pardon me, than landing on runway 1. So there wasn't a plane helicopter collision. There wasn't a plane running into the helicopter. The helicopter flew directly into the landing plane. So just get that straight in your head first. There wasn't like this unfortunate, just completely impossible to avoid. No. Lobach flew the helicopter directly into the landing aircraft. There is some evidence I saw late last night that the pilots who aren't looking for any other traffic, since they've been cleared to land on this runway, and it's got to be full time and attention on landing the aircraft, that at the very last second, they see the helicopter come into view to ram them, and the nose of the plane lifts as they try to climb out of it. It's too late. But that information is going to be, more of that information is going to be revealed as they're able to comb through the black boxes, which have been all recovered now. So the flight curls around. The air traffic controller sees that the Black Hawk is continuing at speed to close on the path of the America Airlines aircraft that's heading in for its landing right now, and says again to the Black Hawk, do you see, go behind? And the Black Hawk responds by saying it's affirmative and requests visual separation, meaning don't mind us, don't bother to pay attention to us on the radar, because we can see the plane and we're going to go behind it. Well, a lot of these apologists for Lobach right now are coming out and saying, well, what must have happened was they saw the airplane that was a mile away that was coming into land. I'm going to show you CNN's acquired footage on what the helicopter pilots couldn't see, what they mistook, but they looked for that dot a mile out, for those headlights a mile away. but couldn't see the NFL stadium lights, headlights that were directly illuminating the entire cabin of the Black Hawk. And then we'll get into a little bit more of who is Lobach and what's going on. Why is she in this role? What was she doing just prior to this? How did she get behind the controls of this Black Hawk helicopter? So a moment after they request visual separation again, which again says to the tower, we got it, no worries, we can see it. Helicopter rams the American Airlines aircraft. Everyone is dead. And that is regrettably, when I heard about the midair collision over the Potomac and the aircraft went in the Potomac on Wednesday, I said they're all dead. Unfortunately, I was right. Because first of all, surviving midair collisions, pretty slim. Landing in the icy Potomac this time of year, you have to be out of it in minutes or you're dead from that. So there's just no living. If anybody lived that hit the water, they were dead in a short order. But they probably didn't live when they hit the water. What was the first thing that happened? The first thing that happened was the Trump administration comes out. And now, mind you, you got Pete Hegseth, you got these people, they're not entrenched yet. You have a lot of establishment anti-whites in there. And the people they're even bringing in are anti-white to varying degrees because you're dealing with the human capital of the West. They're all anti-white. We all grow up in the anti-white narrative, thinking, for example, it's immoral to mention the victimization of Western kind as a people. So what immediately happens? Well, they release the names of the two male pilots, but the female pilot's name is withheld. And they say, oh, that's for the family. The family just wants to be able to tell other family members. And by the way, not going to release the manifest either about it, not even going to black out her name as the pilot who is piloting this aircraft. Not even going to black her name out. We're just not even going to tell you the manifest, where they're going, what they're doing, why they're doing it. These are some kind of important things you're going to find out about in just a moment. Who was doing it? Why were they up there? What was going on? Instead, we got treated to days of don't know who. We're not going to tell you who that pilot was. And curiously, all of her social media disappears. All of it. And you'll find out it's rabid anti-white garbage. More and more is coming to light now about who Lobach was and what she was up to and what her sentiments were. It appears that Lobach, North Carolina, and decided she wanted to go into the military and says, I want to fly Black Hawk helicopters. And they said, of course, immediately, we will bump the first white guy we can, and we will train you. And they brought her on board, rabid anti-white. In what veins? She is a rabid advocate for female rights, a rabid advocate for homosexual rights. Indeed, it is more than speculated now that she was a lesbian and left a partner behind and worked, of course, you all have probably read now, worked in the Biden White House. Have you read, though, do you know yet, that this is her first flight in over 2 years? How long has she been in? 5 years? She hasn't flown a helicopter in 2 years because she was working in the Biden White House. And this was her first flight to check if she was still certifiably a pilot Guess not. I guess she wasn't still qualified. Not able to fly anymore, it would seem, because she flew this thing directly into a landing airplane with its headlights on at night. And there have been a lot of excuses. So here we have, what do we have? We have a radical anti-white female of the feminist vein, identified, at least in or until information comes out that contradicts, as a lesbian, massive advocate in the Army itself, stating that she worked on women's rights and this women's advocacy for women who have been victimized in various ways by the system and by males. Of course, it's not going to be non-white males. It's just going to be them awful white ones. Those are the problem in anti-whiteism. This was a white female at war with Western civilization, being allowed to play as soldier. Now you've had, because of anti-whiteism, being allowed to play as soldier. Well, the guy that should have had that job, almost assuredly a white guy that should have had that job, is doing what? A janitor, collecting trash for a living, has already killed himself because his dreams have been lost and there's no hope for him to achieve anything in life. There's a much bigger picture there that we'll dig into. But a certified victim advocate is the official title that the Army gave her. She was a regular at LGBT, all of the other letters, and that anti-white flag events. They're coming out saying these things like, oh, she was this great athlete. She was this stupendous athlete. We'll show you a picture of this stupendous athlete and the flabby tree trunk legs of hers. And this is just garbage. I also have to say, all of this award-winning overachiever stuff in the military is pure fiction. In the military, since before Bill Clinton, if you are a female or non-white, they shower you with awards, with commendations, with etc., promotions, etc., raises, etc., if you put forward the least bit, the modicum of effort, because that is the morality of the West today, the anti-white immoral imperative. Celebrate the girls. So this paternalistic patting on the head of every non-white, of every female out there. Shafting. I'm not even going to tell you my story of how bad I was shafted. Shafting white males left and right. High achievers. The actual people who should be inheriting those positions, in leadership positions in the West. Absolutely shafting them, cutting them loose, cutting their throats, stabbing them in the back. Any female, any non-white, put forward the slightest bit of effort. And I'm telling you what, promotion galore, medals galore, commendation galore, pictures with ranking officers at the base you're at galore, with Congress people galore. So all of this stuff, anything you ever hear about a female in the military, and we're going to hear from another female Black Hawk pilot. I mean, how many of them are there? And her statements that she made absolutely sounded asinine in defense of this female. You're going to hear more from her. Shower these folks. It's impossible to know if a non-white guy or a woman actually achieves anything in the military. Impossible. Because if you're just non-white or female and you put forth any effort, they're going to treat you like you are an American super superman, superwoman, legend, nonpareil, nothing like you has ever existed before. So for the non-white people out there, non-white guys, non-white women, and white women, for those out there who actually achieve, I guess it sucks for you, but it first sucks for me. So I guess it sucks for you that you went out there and you really achieved, but you're surrounded with hordes of people who just happen to have a vagina or be non-white. That's the reality of it. So we're hearing nothing but, in this, making me sick as can be, all of these cucks celebrating her for such a great soldier that she was. U.S. Army has identified the female soldier in the doomed Black Hawk helicopter that crashed into an American Airlines flight this week, killing 67 people. Captain Rebecca Lobach, no female should be in any vehicle or craft that goes into combat, into conversation. And the reason why is you all suck at fighting and dying. You cry, you whimper, you etc. And in the battlefield, the small percentage of guys that do that as well, we let them get shot. You freeze up, and that is ultimately, just to give you a little hat tip of the direction I'm going, that's ultimately what happened here, in my opinion. She saw this plane coming in, and she froze. And the men on that helicopter, that doomed helicopter, doomed because she was at the stick, were thinking she's going to make some kind of move. They probably yelled, but it was too late. She froze, and everybody is dead because of it. And everyone that's hearing my voice, live or in replay, has watched a female freeze in a moment of stress, have watched females melt in a moment of stress. Just to react. Oh, do you maybe know one who won't do it? So what? th Aviation Battalion in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and had served since 2019, the Army said. The Army had initially refused to identify because supposedly because of her family. No, because the anti-whites were scrubbing her social media from the internet. They didn't want, clearly that's what happened. I mean, it's probably the case that a family can request, don't reveal the name. That's probably true. But in a case like this, they clearly, the public it needs to know. The public wants to know. The public needs to know. You got to weigh one against the other. The family's wish doesn't override the will of the majority. So, but it's an easy excuse, isn't it? To say, oh, we're just going to, it's the family wants this hushed up, while they go and they find all her social media and delete it. All of the anti-white statements proving that, Trump's coming into office, and as little as Trump might care about white people, I mean, who knows? We're not in his head. He's not going out on a limb for white people like he is for Jews and blacks and everybody else, right? And Hispanics and gays and everybody else, right? No, he is, who knows what's going on in his head. But Trump is coming to office and he's saying, look at all this. And they're calling it by the name anti-whites want it called woke. He's like, look at all the woke. Well, do you really think these anti-whites, these wokies, want the proof on a silver platter in the Potomac, Washington, D.C. for Donald Trump? Or do you think they're going to say, oh, shit, she's one of us. Don't let the name go. We'll track down all the social media and delete all of it as quickly as possible. Obviously, that's what happened, in my opinion. At 8:48 on Wednesday night, this past Wednesday, 12 seconds after the second air traffic controller tower alert, the aircraft collided. The aircraft collided with each other. That's not what happened. They did not. I mean, look at this garbage New York Post. They did not collide with each other. The American Airlines was landing. The helicopter flew into it. I mean, when you say the aircraft collided, you take away the sense of who's responsible. And that's done on purpose to protect the little cupcake. We are devastated by the loss of our beloved Rebecca. Of course, the family, it's horrible for them. Rebecca was a warrior and would not hesitate to defend our country in battle. I don't know. I mean, the family believes that, but I don't know if I believe that. Lobach was decorated as a service member whose accolades include Army Commendation Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, and the Army Service Ribbon. It just goes on, like I told you. It's a parade. That's all it is, a parade for women and non-whites in the military. According to the ones that want to put some effort in, the slightest bit. Forget about excelling. You know, back like in World War I, World War II, white guys like Sergeant York used to have to go like capture an entire, like 100 other soldiers at gunpoint, somehow magically doing like Desmond Doss style, like Audie Murphy style. White guys had to achieve things. Now they're just like, everybody gets a Medal of Honor, except for the white guys. According to her family, she graduated within the top 20% of candidates in the ROTC. And how many points were given for being a female? How many points were given for being anti-white? What do they call that? Oh yeah, it was called race norming when it applies to race. You know how they do that on SATs and they do that race norming? Look it up. Lobach also served as a White House social aide during the Biden administration when she wasn't flying Black Hawks and therefore not flying them into airplanes full of babies and children and families. Last month, she escorted Ralph Lauren through the White House when he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. USA Today reporter credited Lobach as instrumental in navigating the hardest periods of his personal life during their time together. So this was some soldier simp, maybe. Or maybe he also identifies as a homosexual. And so she's the most amazing thing that ever existed. So here you see Virginia over here, Washington over there, American Airlines coming up from the south, the Black Hawk coming down from the north, and the Black Hawk flies right in front, right into it. Here we're having a good time in our helicopter. Yay. The Army captain had she had 450 hours. Now I have a note here. An actual pilot, Art Halverson, says, as a former military instructor, I'll tell you that Rebecca Lobach in no way, all capital letters, should have been the pilot in command on that flight. 500 hours in 5 years? Inconceivable, he wrote. I have a little bit more to add to that. The actual instructor here, she had 450, not even 500, and hadn't flown in 2 years. So it gets worse. Now, your white ass, if you're a white guy, you're not going to get it. You're not going to be allowed in that helicopter. You're going to have to go. They're going to ship you out someplace else. It's been too long since you've flown. You're not going to go fly into a heavy trafficked airspace. Not only that, but I looked up in Los Angeles, for example, in order to fly a medevac helicopter, you have to have 4,000 hours of flight time. Not 450, 4,000 as your minimum in order to apply for that job. So that's to fly a medevac in clear airspace in LA. We're talking about some of the most crowded airspace in the country, where you have a corridor where the Black Hawks fly on the DC side of the Potomac River, and then you have all of the flights coming in and departing from Reagan National Airport. How the Black Hawk, and then down here later at the very end of the article, how the Black Hawk crashed into the American airliner, that's what happened, making for the worst airline disaster in decades, is a mystery. It's not a mystery at all. 2 other soldiers in the Black Hawk helicopter, Eves and Mills, dead, and one of them had a wife and a tiny little baby. So he's gone because this incompetent tit was put in charge of this flight and piloting this aircraft. Let's have a listen to another female. And I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to show you exactly what Lobach was looking at. Because I'm going to tell you what. You may have seen some of the video footage. You may have seen especially that way off footage where you see the sudden like explosion in the sky. Wait till you see the NFL stadium headlights coming at the helicopter. Do you see that in the sky? Is that hard to see? Is that hard to see? Is it on the ground?
Black Hawk can be seen flying at speed over the Potomac.
There is, right here, if you can see, this is Lobach flying, as this person said, at speed. And by the way, Potomac. I wouldn't say anything if it weren't for what's the river? What's the river in the UK? Thames. That's spelled very differently. And then over there, they're like, how do you get it wrong? What do you mean? It's not spelled like that at all. It's the Potomac. So many things. All right. That right there, this NFL stadium light coming right at you. And I want you to look also here at the Potomac River. I want you to look right here. Do you see that not only is there a gigantic stadium-size headlights coming at you, but it also illuminates the entire river. This is the helicopter flying left to right.
From the left side of the
Look.
screen.
Still coming. Can you see this yet? Huh, Cupcake? Can you see this? The other argument I got to point out right now is they said, some people were saying, now that woman that we just heard from, she said the plane taking off and flying away, which makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. The other ones are saying, oh no, the next plane to land, because they stack them up. The next plane to land, you can't even see. It's a dot in the sky with its headlights. Now, the control tower said, go behind the AJC. Go behind. They could not have mistaken the one that's a mile out for that instruction to go behind. How does that make sense? They're going to be long gone by the time that plane arrives. So the instruction, go behind? No. You had a little girl piloting this thing, and she was overwhelmed. How many of you all have known a female who uses that phrase that she's overwhelmed and she melts down? It's just too many things. I'm overwhelmed. I can't. I'm overwhelmed. I don't hear guys, regular guys at least, talking about being overwhelmed. They just deal with each item. But women all the time get overwhelmed. She was overwhelmed with piloting this helicopter that she hadn't flown in 2 years. and she hears these instructions coming in. Do you see the AJC fly behind? The co-pilot says, the guy says, yeah, we see it. He's obviously, and this is what I've gathered so far, what I think took place, thinking that she is going to make whatever move that she has to make. And instead, she flies into it.
The American Airlines plane can be seen flying towards the air.
That's it right there. So that helicopter just flew into the landing airplane with the biggest lights you've ever seen.